Today, I'm going to talk to you about one of the biggest problems that we face as founders or leaders, next to Shred, which is how do we build, manage, and motivate teams in a time of extraordinary change, which is what we're living in. And so you saw the term transilience, talent in a time of transilience, and that is what's happening today. Abrupt change or variation, leaping and passing from one state to another, which seems like every hour and every day that we face. And I was told we only have 5 minutes. If anybody's met me, I never talk for only 5 minutes. So we're going to structure it in one of my favorite terms called 5x5. 5x5 is a military term that emerged in World War II when communication was based on radio frequency. So if you were going to bomb someone from one plane to another, you kind of wanted to make sure that you got the logistics correct. And so you would always check and identify whether loudness and clarity was coming in on a scale of 1 to 5. So if the response was 5x5, then you knew that you were all good. And that's actually the foundation of the talk today is communication is the key to everything that we do related to talent. And are we checking every day that our communication is 5x5? Coincidentally, also popularized by Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 2000s by the often conflicted Fate, who was a semi-good, semi-bad vampire. So today, you're going to get 5 ideas in 5 minutes, 5 ideas on the science of talent and teams. So where we're going to start is in that time of transilience, all this talk about the future of work is now. And any legacy ideas that we're holding on to is limiting our success in managing teams. And the reason for this is we have the juxtaposition of more and less. So there's more ubiquitous connectivity. Cognitive upgrades. We are one Google touch away from the answer. We are in a pivot culture where change is constant. Workforces are dispersed. They are no longer in one place. Different ages, different communication styles. Workplaces are decentralized, and more communications are digitally based, where nuance is lost, so there's so much possible confusion. And when we think about all of this and how much the world has changed, again, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, this was the very first time that the term Google it was referenced in popular culture in October 15, 2002. And now, nearing 2020, it seems that the way we manage our talent still is steeped in this day and age. And when we think about talent, we're also suffering from less time, less information, less resources, less money, less communication, less community. And what we face is the 67% challenge, which is the majority of our workforce is not engaged and they're just hanging in there, which results in $7 trillion in lost productivity. So with that in mind, the future of work is really about teams. And what can we learn from one of the most important lessons, which is chickens? There is a TED Talk that I would encourage everybody to watch by Margaret Hefferman, where she referenced a study by the Purdue biologist William Muir. And what he did was 2 tests. One group of chickens were kind of average chickens, and then one group of super chickens, based on productivity. The super chickens were the best egg layers. They produced more eggs. They were super healthy. And he left one group for 6 generations and let them be. These were the average chickens. Another group, the super chickens, it was only the best of the best, and over 6 generations, they looked at what the results were. And the results are very telling for us as leaders, which is the average chickens actually increased productivity over time. The super chickens, after 6 generations, what happened? They killed each other. There were only 3 that were left alive. And what ended up happening is these alpha chickens, super chickens, created a cult of self-interest and unchecked competition because in order to be a super chicken, everybody needed to be a less super. So who are you motivating and managing within your groups? Next big lesson, listen to Aristotle. I don't know how many people have Googled Project Aristotle by Google, where they looked at over 200 teams globally to identify what was the most discerning factor to drive team productivity. And they looked at credentials, they looked at 100 different variables, and the one single variable that led that was psychological safety. It is a greater indicator than academic credentials or experience. So at OpenGravity, my firm, we're obsessed about team and culture. And I'm not going to go through this, but clarity, commitment, craft, common good, and collaboration culture are the things that we really focus on in order to drive that psychological safety. Next, there is a science to how you create teams and driving clarity, diversity, and chemistry. One piece to look at in managing your teams is a concept called the Belbin theory, wherein they form teams through critical roles that have been proven by science to work together. And lastly, once you've assembled your teams in a good manner, it's how you manage them. And the idea that truly to drive that team productivity is about trust. And there's a key lesson that we can learn from Navy SEALs. Simon Sinek, who's one of my favorite authors, wrote a book called Good Leaders Eat Last. And there's a great short YouTube video where he interviewed Navy SEALs, which are, without question, the highest performing teams out there, because they actually die if they don't perform. And they're under high pressure. And the big learning was that there are two factors to look at: performance and trust. Performance is the technical scale. How do you perform on the field? Trust is actually an intangible off the field. And the way they described it is performance is, would I trust you with my life when we're in there in the heat of battle? Trust is, when we're off the battlefield, would I trust you with my money and my wife? And so when we think about the way we structure our teams, obviously poor performance, poor trust is a liability. But interestingly, high performance, poor trust is an equal liability because it means toxic leadership or toxic team members. And when they took a look at the other side, obviously high performance, high trust, you want to keep them. But more interestingly, mid-performance, high trust is actually more valuable. And in some cases, lower relative performance, but high trust is more valuable. So lastly, the 5x5 that we talked about today, first of all, slay your legacy and limiting ideas. Do not manage your talent like it's 2002, because it's a new age. Transilience means the future of work is now, and we are all in a war for talent. Beware the super chicken. Manage unchecked self-interest when you're managing your team, because you're not playing the long game. Thirdly, be safe. Collaboration is the key competitive advantage that we can have. Be like Aristotle. How are you helping your team stay safe? Design with science. Chemistry is critical for success. And finally, pay attention to the secret of SEALs. Max trust trumps max performance in the long game. Thank you.
Get up, get up. Everyone. Questions? While we're waiting for the first question, I'm going to ask the first one. So what's the best way to build trust?
The best way to build trust, I believe, is vulnerability and wanting to understand what the other party says and needs.
Do you want to be vulnerable right now?
Depends on what you want to ask me.
Should I just
Next question.
Next question. I really like the Navy SEALs model with the acidic personalities in that one quadrant. Do you have any tactical advice for how you would go about transitioning someone from misalignment to a rock star? And how do you kind of take someone along that journey and keep them because you want to keep them? Because, yeah, so any experience or insights would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So I would say the first one would be rapidly, because Simon Sinek has a great quote in his pieces. As leaders, those are often invisible, but to the rest of the team, you just have to ask who's the asshole. And you will actually understand who those toxic or acidic personalities are. But sometimes context actually drives behavior. So understanding the personality types of each individual, what the triggers and behaviors are, possibly remixing based on chemistry, but sometimes you just need to make a decision. Because trust once lost is incredibly hard to regain.
Hi. A lot of the research and talks that I hear are focused on larger teams, which is great.
Yeah.
How would you parlay that information into smaller teams, sub 10?
Absolutely. So I have a separate firm, which is a managed services firm, and typically our teams are agile teams that get formed and reformed, and they're typically between 3 and 6 in terms of working teams. And what's critical for us is, again, understanding the behavior types. I don't know how many people here have heard of a firm called Crystal Knows. Crystal Knows is a LinkedIn Chrome extension where you can actually read a full person's DISC profile just by pulling text. So no surveys, you can put it on, you can update the Chrome widget, but understanding what their triggers are as human beings. So to me, in small teams, it's understanding the individual, how they fit together, and the nudging behavior through the life of the project. So when I talk about 2002 versus 2020, 2002, we had a crap load of time, right, to do things and the ability to do it wrong a few times. We don't now. And so what you need to do is, before someone's crying in your room, is that you're nudging behavior at those micro moments to ensure trust is happening through the process, but build the team well, not just in technical expertise, but chemistry and fit from the get-go.
Last question.
Hi, back middle. Hey.
Hey.
Hi, my name's Anthony. I just wonder, what are some of the challenges you've seen in trying to teach others how to do this, how to implement some of that practice or build trust, if they really haven't had the experience to do that throughout school or throughout their early career?
So the fundamental thing that I would say is going back to first principles. And first principles about human behavior is that we're self-interested. And so to understand, to seek to understand each individual self-interest. So whether you're selling something or you're building the teams, what is each individual self-interest? Park your own and park your own biases, but understand what each person is coming from, and then base your communication with building towards that interest and trust. Again, towards your goal, but if you don't understand each individual and their motivators, you're dead before you begin.
Thank you, Karla.
Thank you.